The Hawks are currently 9th in the East with a record of 17-17. While there's more than half of the season left, things might not look up for Atlanta if Nate McMillan and Trae Young can't always see eye to eye on certain things. So in this video, we're going to talk about what went down between the franchise player and his head coach earlier in December, along with how they responded to the situation. First up, what even happened? When Atlanta was set to face off against the Nuggets on the 2nd of December, Young and McMillan got into a bit of a disagreement. As Trae was suffering from a minor shoulder injury, he wanted to skip the shoot-around so that he could receive treatment before deciding whether or not he could play in the game. According to Shams Charania and Sam Amick of The Athletic, this annoyed Nate, who reportedly gave the point guard an ultimatum. He could either play off the bench or not show up to the game at all. Young chose the second option and was officially ruled out of the game with right shoulder soreness. Next up, what did Trae have to say about the situation? Following the incident, Young actually downplayed the incident and was pretty upset about the fact that the media made it public for virtually no reason. As stated by the athlete, it's a private matter made public, and since everyone lacked context, they weren't able to understand everything properly. He added that if it had stayed private, then it probably wouldn't have been a big deal, and there wouldn't have been so much unnecessary drama. So he called the whole situation unfortunate because of that. Young went on to say that he's locked in on competing for the NBA championship, and further emphasized that if someone's an outside guy who doesn't know much about a private matter, then they should probably mind their own business. He finished by saying they were all doing good behind the scenes and that if the reporters had any further questions, they could ask someone else since he said everything he needed to. Following that, how did Nate respond to the aftermath of the incident? A couple of days after the fiasco, McMillan told reporters that it was a simple miscommunication between the two, implying that it wasn't nearly as bad as people made it out to be. Nate also highlighted that the account of the event being circulated was factually incorrect. He pointed to reports claiming that he told Trae to not show up to the game, and according to McMillan, he will never and has never told a player to miss a game. Like Young, Coach Nate also expressed his displeasure for the matter being made so public because, at the end of the day, they're like a family, since they're always working and spending so much time with each other. And when you're in such close proximity for extended periods of times, disagreements are only natural. McMillan finished by telling reporters he knows what Trae's capable of and that the two of them are going to continue to work on ways to help bring a championship to the city of Atlanta. Coming up, how did others react to the situation? Matt Barnes and Jelani McCoy, the co-host of the What's Burnin' show on YouTube, made it known that they don't like Nate's coaching style at all. As stated by Barnes, he's one of the few old-school coaches in the league, so he naturally believes in being more hard-nosed than most other coaches. But because of his traditional style, it doesn't seem like he has the locker room anymore. That's why Barnes thinks this game has passed his ways by. He went on to say that if Coach isn't able to adapt to the new culture, then their days are numbered. Matt believes Nate won't even finish the season as the Hawks coach. McCoy made similar comments and also recalled some of the things he had to deal with when he was being coached by McMillan before talking about how petty the coach can be. Moving on, what's the future looking like for the Hawks? After a hot start to the 2023 season, the Hawks are battling just to make it to the play-in now. They've only won 8 of their last 20 games and lost a ton of games that should have been easy W's. Plus, with all the drama surrounding Trae and McMillan, some people, such as Barnes, think the Hawks might fire the coach mid-season. The Hawks still have 48 games left to play in their campaign, and they're full of talent as Young and DeJounte Murray are leading the charge. Also, their roster can get even better if they find a suitable trade for John Collins. So, as long as Coach Nate and his squad can stay on good terms, then we can definitely see the Hawks having a successful run as they did in 2021. But that might be difficult considering how much of a tough cookie McMillan is. At the end of the day, it's always easier to replace a coach than it is to replace your star player. So if things don't work out too well going forward, Nate might just be fired from his role. Now, let's rank the worst coaches in NBA history. Starting off, we have Don Casey at number 8. Casey had 238 games under his belt as a head coach in the NBA, and he lost a ton of them. In each season that Don was a head coach, he had a losing record. He went 11-33 with the Clippers in 1989, followed by a record of 30-52 with them the year after. Then, when Casey became the head coach of the Nets in the 1999 season, he led them to a mediocre record of 13-17, followed by a worse record the next year with 31 wins and 51 losses. With a winning percentage of 35.7 as head coach, he'll forever go down as one of the worst to do it. Next up, we have Richie Adubato at 7. Out of a total of 367 games as head coach in the NBA, Richie could only lead his teams to 127 wins. That gives him a win rate of 34.6. 98.6%. He led the Pistons to a terrible record of 12-58 in 1980, but once he made his way to Dallas, he had a pretty solid start, as he had a winning record of 42-29 in the 1990 season. But things changed the next season. He led the Mavs to an insane amount of losses, as they went 52-141 from 1990 until his firing in 1993. In fact, they lost 35 of 37 games from November 1992 to February 1993. Following that, we have Gary St. Jean at 6. Much like Casey, Gary could never get his team to have a winning record. He was a head coach for 6 consecutive seasons, and each one was a disaster. In the 450 games he coached during that stretch, he was only able to win 172 games, while he lost 278 of them. Having a terrible win rate of 38.2% despite being a head coach for that long is, well, not something to be proud of. But we're glad he gave up on coaching teams following his horrendous run with the Warriors in the 2000 season. Moving on, we have Kurt Rambis at 5. While Rambis was a solid player, he wasn't the best coach, though that wasn't always the case, as he started off his coaching career pretty strong, leading the LA Lakers to a record of 24-13 when he stepped in as their head coach in the 1999 season for 37 games. But after that, it was all downhill, as he led the Timberwolves to a terrible record of 15-67 in 2010 and another horrible record of 17-65 the season after. When he stepped in as the Knicks head coach in 2016, he led them to a poor record of 9-19, giving him 65 wins and 164 losses as a head coach. That's not even a 30% win rate. Then we have Sidney Lowe at 4. Out of the 307 games Lowe coached in the NBA, he won only 79 games, giving him a horrendous win rate of 25.7%. In his 2 years with many, he led them to a record of 33-102, and he was just as bad with the Grizzlies, as he led them to a record 29-53 in both the 2001 and 2002 seasons. Sidney only made matters worse for himself when the Grizzlies started the 2003 season on an 8-game losing streak. The Grizzlies front office had seen enough and let him go. Now for number 3, we have Wes Unseld. Wes may have been a star player for Washington, but he was the complete opposite as their coach from 1987 to 1994. In 6 seasons as the Bullets coach, Unseld averaged around 53 losses per season and only led his team to the playoffs once. Out of the 547 games he coached, he had a record of 202-345, giving him a win rate of 36.9%. Minus his first season as the head coach, each year was pretty disastrous. But hey, at least he'll still go down as one of the franchise's greatest players. Coming up, we have Tim Floyd at 2. Floyd coached Chicago in the post-Jordan era, and it was ugly. He led the Bulls to a record of 49-190 during his stint with them, which equates to a terrible winning percentage of 20.5%. Though he was a much improved coach when he coached the Hornets in the 2004 season, leading them to a record of 41-41. Despite that, his win rate as a coach rests at 28, as he was never given the chance to be head coach again. Finally, we have Brian Winters at number 1. Winters' tenure with the Vancouver Grizzlies was one of the worst of all time, as he led the franchise to a terrible record of 23-102 during his 125-game stint as their head coach. In fact, the Grizzlies' 15-67 record in the 1996 season matched the worst record by any expansion team, and Vancouver also became the fastest franchise in NBA history to reach 100 losses. With an overall record of 36-148, Winters finds himself with an atrocious win rate of 19.6%, the worst ever by any NBA coach with at least 100 games under his belt. That's a wrap for this video. Do you think Trae and his coach are gonna butt heads again, or is everything all good? Let us know in the comments. As always, remember to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. We'll see you in the next one.